What's up, everybody? It's Coach Ceelo here. Welcome to the third official episode of the No Bullshit Six-Figure Sales Podcast. And today, I'm going to be talking about handling objections. So this is probably going to be a little different than everybody else. Most trainers are going to do all of these fancy things that you can say. Every time I turn on my social media, I see a sales trainer on there, telling you, if they say this, you do this. And if they say that, then you do that. And to be quite honest, that stuff rarely works. I mean, it can work once in a while, but it's like throwing mud on the wall and seeing what sticks, guys. The bottom line when it comes to objections is that the whole point to the interaction is to get the sale, to help the person in spite of themselves, help them make a decision that in the end will be good for them. So every time that you are making a decision, and any time that you're thinking about something, you have to think to yourself, and you got to figure out, is what I'm about to say going to put me closer to making the sale or not? Because a lot of times it's ego. A lot of times it's insecurity. A lot of times when you're handling an objection, you just want to slam them with it because you felt like they slammed you with it. Is that honestly going to get you the sale? Okay, yeah, later when you're telling your buddies the story of how it went, it might sound really, really good, but did you get the sale? Did you help the person? Did you put money in your pocket? No. So it just made a good story. Yeah, they told me this, so I rammed this right. That's not going to work, guys. So instead of focusing on that, let's focus on service to the person, and let's focus on actually moving the needle forward, doing what you need to do to close the sale, right? So here's what I want you to do. I'm going to play psychic now for a minute. This is one of my favorite trainings, and a lot of people have done this, not just me, right? I'm not the first one to make it up. But I'm going to play psychic here, and I want you to go ahead and pause this for a second. And I want you to write down what are the most common objections that you're always going to get. And then come back. No, really, go do that right now. All right, so if you're back, right, here's what you put: time, money, spouse, business partner, research, cost, and financial advisor. Did I guess right? Yeah? Been reading your email? Been reading your thoughts? Guys, it never changes. The objections absolutely never change. And as a matter of fact, objections almost always are smoke screens for uncertainty. Okay? Now, you have to understand the difference between an objection and a condition. And some conditions, at the close, you can still work them. But a condition is something that is just they're facing and you can't fix. An objection is an excuse. And like I said, it's usually for uncertainty. So always ignore the first objection. It's usually not real. It's bullshit. Okay? It is uncertainty, and you need to find out what that uncertainty is. Handle the objection and then get it down to the money. Even if you don't think it's anything to do with the money, it's always about the money. So if you can get it down to a point where you can bring it down to the money, now it's just a matter of negotiation. Now it's just a matter of making things work. So there's 3 ways to handle objections, all right? You can handle the objections like a warrior. You can handle your objections like a general. Or you can handle the objections like a ninja. Now, the warrior goes to battle. You wait for the attack, and then you counter it. And it's 50-50. It's 50-50. Maybe yes, maybe no. Right? That's how it works. And the majority of you are stuck in there. If you're listening to this podcast, if you're a business owner, if you're a salesperson, and you haven't quite surpassed the six figures yet, or you haven't quite crowned just over the six figures yet, chances are you're still in warrior mode. Now, don't get me wrong. There are six-figure earners that have made their six figures and continue to do so in warrior mode, but it's not the best place to be. Now, the general, think about it, is a strategist. You're prepared for what they have coming, you expect it, and you're ready for it. It's strategy. And then the ninja, well, they never see it coming, right? But you got to kind of shift the mindset here, all right? And the mindset is you're like a servant ninja, okay? You work for them. You're helping them in spite of themselves. So that's the servant. That's the servant ninja, but still ninja. They never saw it coming. So let's talk about warrior, all right? Warrior it's you versus them. And you only win by either outsmarting, persuading, or pushing through. And this, like I said, is where most of you have planted your flag. So if you're stuck there, we got to get you out of there. But while you're there, at least let me give you some ammo. All right? Step number one, ignore and plow through. If it comes up again, then address it. But always, always, always ignore it the first time. Step number two, isolate the objection. How do you do that? Real easy question, guys. Is that the only thing keeping you from doing this today? Is that the only thing keeping you from solving XYZ problem, the problem that you're trying to help them solve? Step three, attack and counter. I understand you don't have the time to do this, but how important is solving this issue to you? How long have you been dealing with this? How long do you want to continue like this? If not now, then when? If you had started a month ago, 2 months ago, 6 months ago, would we even be having this conversation now? How much time have you set aside towards fixing this problem? What happens if you don't start now? What other areas of your life would this affect if you don't start doing this now? I call those last two questions backing in the ambulance. All right? You're taking the problem and you're exacerbating it. You're making it bigger. You're making the wound hurt more. You're making them understand all of the consequences, right? Which leads me to step 4, by the way, and that is show the consequences of action versus the consequences of inaction. What happens if you do decide to do this? What happens if you don't decide to do this? Very, very important, because that'll help them get to the decision. And then step 5, you just close. Now, we'll cover closing in another podcast, right? But whatever closing procedure, and by the way, if you don't have one, that's part of the problem. You need to have everything. You need to have a closing procedure. You need to have a whole sales process. We'll cover that later. But just whatever closing that you have, whatever you do, that's when you're going to want to do it, right? And then if a new objection starts all over again, well, guess what? So do you. You understand why this is a grind? Do you understand why this is like pulling teeth? Now, there are guys and gals that are very good at this, and they will grind them, persistence overcomes resistance, and they just grind them down to doing this. But a lot of the times, that'll be rescissions and kicks and returns, because you just took them to the point of exhaustion rather than persuading and kind of taking it from there. So again, that was the very first one, right? And like I said, that was doing it like a warrior. So let's talk about the general. Now, what's the general do? I said it, it's strategy, right? So how are you going to do this? You're going to have third-party stories for each one of the objections. Now, I want these to be real stories. They don't have to be your stories. They could be stories of your customers. They could be stories of the customers of other people, other salespeople that you know, of other people in an industry. It doesn't even have to be in your industry. It just has to be a story that there was a problem, they understood they had a problem, they took action, they fixed the problem, and now everything is good. And the reason why the third-party story is so important, and I think one day I'm going to do a podcast just on third-party stories, is because psychologically there is no resistance. We are hardwired to love stories. Everybody loves stories. Think about a friend standing up and starting to tell a story, and everybody's going to turn their head to see what they're talking about. So if you can take your message and implant it within one of these stories, there's no resistance. Their brain is not telling them, oh, he's just saying this to sell me. Or no, you're just telling a story, and automatically that whole lesson of the story by the way, that's how humanity has survived, right? The very first beginning civilizations passed on all of their information and all of their knowledge through myths and through stories. So that's the power of the third-party story. So if now you take every single objection and you write a story, a compelling story around it, a real one, remember, because if it's real, it's authentic, you feel it and they feel it, but you've got this already prepared third-party story for it. Now we're starting to get somewhere. Now we're using some strategy, right? So when you do it as a general, step number one, ignore the first one. Always, no matter what you're doing, always ignore the first one. Number two, isolate it. Same way I showed you last time. Number three, this is where you insert your third-party story. And what you're going to do is you're going to use one of the oldest sales methods that have ever existed. It still works great. You can just make it more sophisticated by not doing it exactly the way I'm about to show you, but it's called feel, felt, found. Hey, John, Mary, I understand how you feel. I used to feel the same way, or the Smith family used to feel the same way. And here's what we found. Now, that's the simple method, right? A much easier method is, I totally understand what you're talking about. You know, my buddy or myself were talking to the Smith family the other day, and they were talking about how they didn't have the time to do this, you know, and I totally understood it then. I mean, they got 4 kids just like you, and they're both working. But here's the thing, when we started talking, just like I was talking with you, they mentioned that they've been in this rut for 6 years. And that if they didn't do something now, well, now you fall into the definition of insanity, you know, doing the same thing over and over and over again. And so they took the leap and they did it. And that was a few months ago. And guess what? Now they've got the results of A, B, and C, and they're super happy with what they're doing. You just completely handled that whole objection without addressing them directly, without them having any resistance. They understood the moral of the story, and now they are imagining themselves in the story. You guys ever watch a horror movie and something really freaky happens and you jump? It's because you imagined yourself in that story. You were so in it at that moment. It's the same thing with the third-party story. And then step number 4, you close. All right? Whatever closing sequence you use, whatever you have, if you don't have one, you better get one today, right? But that's closing as a general. You're going to make a lot more money that way. It's going to be a lot easier. Now let's talk about the ninja. All right, ninja mindset. I like to use the example of the Pink Panther. If you guys ever, a lot of you probably are not old enough to have watched the Pink Panther movies, but if you've ever watched the Pink Panther movies is the main character is this guy called Inspector Clouseau, right? He's a French detective, really, really cool, funny, right? And then he has his I don't know what you call him. It's like his valet, his assistant. It's this Asian guy called Kato Fong. And Kato Fong, his whole, aside from being his assistant, his main job is to sneak up on Inspector Clouseau and surprise him, because he's a martial arts expert, right? Surprise him so that he's always able to be ready for any attack or for anything that happens, right? And so this is kind of like the mindset that I want you to have with your guests, with your prospects, in that you are working for them. You're here to serve them. And so the ninja, they never see it coming. But it's not they never see it coming for a nefarious reason because you're trying to, dark psychology persuade them into doing something that's bad for them. No, you're just using all the tools that you have available to help them make a decision because they need this. And the bottom line is that there are many things going on in their heads that is keeping them from doing it, which is why they met you. And now you're going to help them do this. Just like Cato Fong would go out and surprise Inspector Clouseau, right? Or another way of thinking of it is, think of it like when the government hires hackers to hack their websites. Of course the government doesn't want their websites hacked, but if you don't hire the people that could do it, nobody would really, they wouldn't be able to get better, right? So think of yourself as an advisor or as a coach, but the very first part is you got to help them over that. You got to help them in spite of themselves to be able to make that decision. And the more you're into higher ticket, the more this is going to happen. You're going to have a role here of not just salesperson or business owner, but it's going to be part psychologist, part friend, part therapist. I mean, all of this is happening in 30, 45 minutes, 90 minutes, depending on the length of your presentation, right? But keep that mindset. You're still servant ninja, but ninja mindset, right? So the ninja is an expert in his field. So one of my other podcasts, I told you that people have to know, like, and trust you to buy from you. That's true. They have to know, like, and trust you. But if you're a ninja, not only do they know, like, and trust you, they know, like, trust you, and they respect you. See, they know that you're their advisor, and you've gotten to a point where you've won them over enough with your skill and with your ability that they're like, this guy can get me to where I want to go. And now there's a respect. Now, not only do they know, like, and trust you, but they want to know what your advice is, and there's a very high likelihood that they're going to follow it. So with the ninja, step one, uncover every possible objection up front during the discovery. So here's where the difference is. In all the other ones, we were waiting for the objection to come, and then you overcome it, right? The warrior would attack it. The general, as a strategist, would kind of slightly deflect an answer. The ninja, you never get the objection at all. Yeah, in the beginning, you got it. You figured out what they needed. You're going to figure out during your discovery all of the objections that are going to come out, and then you're going to handle them all, so that by the time you get to the end, there are no objections. So step one, uncover every possible objection up front during the discovery. Now here's the most important part of this. Do not attack. Just take the information. You're gathering the intel. You're gathering the info. That's it. Don't do anything with it. If you do anything at that moment, it will cause resistance. Their subconscious will let them know, hey, there's something weird here. But if you're just getting those questions answered and you're bringing this all out, now you're good. Now, how do you do that? Remember the questions that you were asking when I was telling you before, what the warrior asks at the end? Well, without knowing the objection, you start asking those questions. Hey, is there anything going on in your life right now that would prevent you from being able to do blank, blank, blank today? You start asking all of these questions up front, and now you've got all of these questions that you got answered. You know exactly what those objections are. Step number two, soft diffuse every objection at the discovery confirmation, ending with a trial close. Let me unpack that. There's a lot there. I told you don't attack it, right? So there's no selling ever done in the discovery. It's your information gathering phase, which is exactly what it's supposed to do. But what a ninja does is at the end, when you do a discovery confirmation, and for those of you that don't know what a discovery confirmation is, that means that when you finished your discovery process, you're now repeating back to them everything that they told you. And a little more. Right? Number one, you're showing that you listened and that you took everything into account. But number two, now this is where you're going to take every one of those objections and you're going to soft diffuse it. What do I mean by soft diffusing it? Well, you're almost going to handle it, but not handle it. It's almost like a second, like an afterthought. Hey, listen, I understand. So, hey, John, Mary, you told me that you guys like doing this, and the reason why we're talking today is because of X, Y, Z, and you've been having a problem with X and X. And the only thing that's really keeping you from moving forward today is that you're not sure about the finances or how the money's going to be coming around. But, come to think of it, if you think about all the money you've spent up until now, it almost sounds like you can't afford not to do it. and then you keep going. You're not really addressing the objection. You're soft diffusing it. You're planting the seed that it kind of just solved itself, right? Then step number 3 is you tailor your whole presentation to their needs, and you pepper in the third-party stories, solving all of their objections. So now, that's when you're addressing it, but you're not addressing it directly anyway. You're still doing it via the third-party stories, but you had already seeded it in. You soft diffused them in the beginning, because that removed some resistance, and then later you come in with the third-party stories. Step 4, the close is seamless, because it was all handled up front. See, at the end now, the close is just, how can I help you? Now it's not you versus them, it's you getting together with them to help them solve the problem. Because if it's about the money, or if it was about the time, it's just us together putting our heads together to see how we can make it happen. Guys, my name is Coach Ceelo, and I've helped hundreds of salespeople and entrepreneurs break their 6 figures and continue making their 6 figures. And if you continue listening to these podcasts, you too will be another.